Five, four, three, two, one. Hey, gang, and welcome back to Alien Protocols, the Advanced Protocols Data Project. We're very lucky today to have a gentleman that I've had the honor and pleasure of speaking to and learning from. He is a internal medical physician, a peace and social justice activist. He's a UFO investigator and a contact experiencer. And he's really dealt with experiencers in this issue and research for many years. And so it's a real pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Joseph Burkes. Thank you for your time, Dr. Burkes.
Thank you, buddy. And thank you all out there and listening to and watching Alien Protocols.
I appreciate that so much. We've spoken a couple of times, and we had an amazing conversation about a week ago. And you brought up your two big premises you have in philosophies, and they just blew my mind. I think they're so important to this field. And so tell me how you really got hooked in all of this. Where was when did the fire strike with you?
The fire struck in 1991 when I, by chance, went to the local public library and picked up a book about UFOs. It was a very hard time in my life. We were adding an addition to my wife's studio, and the roof was off, and it was raining, and I was working two jobs to pay for our overpriced piece of real estate on the west side of Los Angeles, and I worked for 30 years in LA as an internal medicine doctor. So I went to the local library and said, I need a hobby. I need something to distract me. What do you got on UFOs? So they showed me this book. It was The Incredible Gulf Breeze Sightings, Ed and Francis Walters, and there were pictures in it. Whenever you start a new subject, it's good to have pictures so you don't have to read too much initially. And the pictures were fascinating. And I read one book and then another and another. And after about a year, I got the courage to go to my first UFO meeting, UFO Expo West. It was the spring of 1992. And there was a tall, bearded, blonde emergency room doctor. And I was working ER at the time. And he said, my name is Dr. Stephen Greer, and I've developed a technique to attract UFOs to secure research sites for citizen diplomatic initiative to the intelligences behind this phenomena, flying saucers.
Wow.
Well, I had been a peace and social justice activist and volunteer in the physicians' anti-nuclear movement in the 1980s. I was on the board of directors of Physician for Social Responsibility, and it was our affiliate organization that won the Nobel Prize in 1985 as the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. Our mission was to educate the population and the leaders of both sides of the Iron Curtain about the medical consequences of nuclear war and the dangers of the nuclear arms race. So for that, we won the Nobel Prize. I had a radio show for a couple of years called Prescription for Survival, and that was just one form of activism. I go back all the way to the Ban the Bonnie era in the 50s when my mom used to drag me to peace demonstrations. And some people like you and I might recall, back in the 1960s, there were in 50s, there was atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons.
Yep.
And the radiation was getting into the biosphere, into deciduous teeth of children. A famous pediatrician named Spock, Dr. Spock, not Mr. Spock from Star Trek, Spock, Benjamin Spock, he collected the teeth, and sure enough, there was strontium-90 and other radioactive nucleotides in the teeth of children. So a worldwide movement led by women demanded an end to atmospheric testing, and that pressure was very important in getting the atmospheric test ban passed in 1962, 63, and we no longer had that risk of radiation being pumped into the atmosphere from nuclear tests. So when I heard about Dr. Greer's program in 1992, and I had been a citizen's diplomat of sorts, and now he's claiming he has a citizen's diplomatic program to the ETs, wild horses couldn't keep me away. With my new interest in UFOs and my decades of activism, I was on board. And our mission was ambitious. We did attract UFOs to secure research sites. Within the first week, I saw Golden Globe, red orbs. Later on, when I was in Mexico, an enormous triangular-shaped object that I presume was an ET craft. And for 6 years, I was a working group coordinator of this, what's called the CE5 initiative. The audience may know, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I prefer the term HICE, H-I-C-E. human-initiated contact experiences. And I prefer that term because people all over the world are doing contact, and they may not have read up on Dr. Jan Hynek's and Dr. Jacques Vallée's close encounters of the first, second, third, and fourth kind. And so designating human-initiated contact as the fifth kind is, you have to explain to people who don't know this jargon what this pseudoscientific designation is. So I prefer HICE, human-initiated contact experience, which is broader than just going out in the field in groups and trying to attract UFOs.
Yeah, that term seems to encompass more of the experience, and the experience is more than just contact. There's all sorts of things going on around it. You know, I want to just backtrack for a second, because when you told me this story the first time, it blew my mind with how amazing of a sighting this was. You really quickly describe it because you're very efficient, a pragmatic mind. But you, from your description before, you're talking about how Dr. Greer at the time had a philosophy that UFOs were going to rock concerts because of the music and the strong lights. So at the time he wasn't doing lasers, he was doing floodlights, and he had a floodlight, and this triangle was way off in the distance. And then describe exactly what happened, just because the description of the craft and what happened after.
Quite an amazing experience. We were at the base of Popocatépetl volcano. It was February 1st, 1993. Popocatépetl rises up to 17,000 feet. It's an active volcano. Adjacent to it, there's a sleeping volcano called Iztaccíhuatl, and we were operating at 7,000 foot elevation at the base of this enormous Popocatépetl volcano. And we did the contact protocols, which involved meditation and thought projection and accessing consciousness, hopefully in its most unbounded form, to facilitate telepathic communication. And just around midnight, an amber light appeared between the volcanoes. And it was at least 7 miles away. I knew the distance because I'd gotten precision maps from UCLA geography department. And Dr. Greer saw that it was moving at an oblique angle, not towards us, but in our general vicinity. He then took this powerful 50,000 candle power signal lantern, halogen operated, and he fired it at the object, and it changed direction and started coming directly towards us.
Wow.
As it approached, we could see it was triangular shaped. It blocked out the stars. It was enormous. At about a mile from our position on the ridge line, there was a small church, and when the UFO flew over the small church, the church looked like a Matchbox toy. It was tiny. The triangle was 200 feet perhaps across. When we signaled at it, it signaled back. One flash from our lantern, one flash back from them, two flashes, two back from them. So this is what we called in those days photon talk. We established there was communication. And at that point, we were very excited to document our encounter. For me, it was a tremendous experience because, as I mentioned before, I've been active in the Doctors' Peace movement. And Dr. Helen Collicott was an Australian physician, pediatrician, who was one of the leaders of our movement. And she had asked in her presentations to doctors, what can you say about a race of intelligent beings that builds tens of thousands of nuclear weapons and prepared to kill hundreds of millions of people, but doesn't house the children on the planet, provide vaccination, food, and clothing for a billion people? And she said that it bespeaks of a kind of hatred, a hatred not only of ourselves, but our children and future generations, and perhaps even of the Creator herself, God. And
I love how you said her. I love how you said her, by the way. The Creator, her. I love that.
When I saw this UFO coming towards us, I realized that we were not alone in the universe. And when I was an activist in the peace and social justice movement and Physicians for Social Responsibility, I used to worry that we would have a nuclear war and every single person that I knew and loved would be killed. There were Soviet submarines during the height of the Cold War going back and forth, less than 300 miles off our coast, and they could fire a cruise missile from the submarine that would reach us in less than 10 minutes, and everyone I knew could die. And I fear that our civilization would reach a nuclear end. And when I saw that UFO coming towards us at the base of Popocatépetl, all I could say was yes, We are not alone in the universe.
Did,
Even if we take the nuclear option and destroy our civilization, we will be remembered, perhaps as the late great planet Earth. But I imagine, kind of in a naive way, that somewhere out in space there might be ET kids who could read about us. And worse than destroying our civilization would be destroying remembrance, the act of remembering itself. So I was excited. I was joyful. I was saying yes. All my chakras opened up. And then things started to go bad. We had all kinds of equipment that was set up to document our encounter. We had a state-of-the-art, at that time, an Olympus Super 8 video camera with a telescopic lens.
okay, I lost Dr. Burke for a second. Are we here?